And welcome to the Mediocre Photography Show. My name's Ben.
And my name's Jack.
And today we have a podcast episode, don't we?
Hurrah.
I know. We have a vague idea of what we're going to talk about, but, I don't think we should give too much away, I think we should leave you, the beautiful audience, in a little bit of suspense about the exact topics. And that's mainly because we don't know where it's going either.
No, there'll be plenty of tangents, I'm sure.
Definitely. So yeah, suppose we should start with how we've been. It's been a month since I've asked you this on screen, or at least I think it's been a month since I've asked you how you were anyway. So what's changed?
Yeah.
What's new?
Nothing much really. I've just been working throughout the lockdown and having to no time to do anything else is fairly fun.
That 20-hour contract is pretty intense, hey?
Well, yeah, plus the overtime with the understaffing and stuff like that. So yeah, that's good fun. But apart from that, really, it's been work. This week it's really hit me in terms of work and having to get up at 4 a.m. every morning. Even though I am working for like only 4 hours a day, the 4 a.m. starts are pretty killer.
Why don't you do something on your way to work then? Photograph the sunrise, or photographing in that nice light.
Ben, what have we been told about sunrises and sunsets, man?
As long as you're not photographing just that, you can use the light to photograph things more interestingly.
I have thought about taking my camera, but the thing is, like, when you wake up at 4 a.m, obviously at the minute the sun, by the time I get out, is already so far up in the sky because of like the longer days and stuff like that. But yeah, I have thought about it, but the thing is, like, when I'm going to work, I just want to get to work and get out.
I don't know, it could be interesting to do something along that topic,
Yeah, I definitely want to.
There's been projects done quite a lot about commutes and moving from place to place, and photographing purely a journey could be quite interesting for you, especially with the more introspective work you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and how much actual work is affecting that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, could be an interesting idea. So a month has passed.
A month has passed.
How have you been?
I have been well. I have been doing a ton of research on loads of different topics. Like, the job that I've got at the moment is I've got a lot of free time, so it's been really nice, and I've really been using that to my advantage, and like catching up on all the documentaries that I want to watch, catching up on watching all of these, reading all of these articles on coronavirus and social distancing and the science behind it and bits and pieces like that. So I've been absolutely indulging my thirst for knowledge at the moment, which has been great. Photography wise, I have been up to some stuff as well, obviously continuing with the humble misadventures. Work is still being created. In fact, I've got some that I need to develop at some point soon. And yeah, editing down the current work that I've got, still trying to nail the sequence on that, which I'm not 100% happy with. But for something that was meant to be just we'll chuck something together and see what happens, it's actually turning into a more involved project now, which is quite nice. I'm spending more time thinking about it, and potentially it could go somewhere. But the big news is that I mentioned a while ago now that I entered a competition, which I was shortlisted for. I didn't win.
I was hoping.
However,
I
did get a judge's commendation.
Oh, nice.
And I think they said that the textures and printing of my work was highly commendable. What's interesting is that I presented the work to them digitally, so I don't know how they knew that my printing was good, but we take that as we take it.
A dub. Take the dub.
Yeah. And they did actually say that they were sending me a small gift in the post.
Ooh.
So that could mean anything from a £1,000 studio monitor to, and what it's more likely to be, a USB stick with the company's name on it. However, beggars cannot be choosers, and I would like to thank Ezio for putting together a fantastic competition. And honestly, I was looking through some of the work, and credit to the person that won. Like, their photography was really good.
Is it fire? Well, it's also the you're getting your work out. People have looked at I've seen a couple of them, the commendations. Has your work been posted on the Instagram?
Yeah.
Their Instagram. Oh, nice. Well, people have seen that, haven't they?
Well, yeah, it was really interesting that I actually had my work published by Izo, and I also was featured in Photograd's what are they calling it? Oh, their online exhibition that they're doing. Which is actually going live on Thursday for anyone that's interested. And I was featured on both of their pages at the same time. And normally on my Instagram, I get maybe like one follower every 3 days or so. One new follower every 3 days. Not that I like massively keep track or anything. I just look at it, oh, someone new. But on that particular day, I think I got something like 50 or 60 new followers from being featured. And they're not massive pages. So, yeah, I think that's some advice for those people that are potentially listening, is even if you are entering competitions and you're not winning competitions, that exposure, pardon the pun, and getting featured, it can lead to bigger and better things. The only thing to be wary of is don't ever pay to be featured anywhere. Don't, as tempting as it is, don't pay for likes, don't pay for follows, stuff like that, because 9 out of 10 times they are scams. And you do need to be a little bit selective with people claiming that it is going to be legit. So I think competitions, stuff like that, is definitely going to be a better way to go. Submising? Entering submissions to collectives, bits and pieces like that definitely help too.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your...
Thank you. And when the small gift, I have no idea what it is, but when the small gift does arrive, then I'll post it on the Mediocre Instagram page, so we can all share in Ben's glory. I swear to God, if it's like a mouse mat, I am gonna be...
Stay humble.
It's like gonna be so anticlimactic.
I can, yeah. Or a mouse mat actually would be quite cool.
I've got a really cool mouse mat actually.
Oh, well. What is it, ISO or EZO?
I always say EZO, but that's just because Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I'll ask them next time
yeah.
when I'm invited to, their really swanky awards ceremony.
Oh, the after party, yeah.
But yeah. But the other thing that I have done this week, which has been quite interesting, was I watched a film which was recommended by Mr. Henderson himself. And that film was Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. Now, Jack,
Banger.
I think,
Banger of a
is a bit of a fan of this film.
Oh,
it's fair to say.
It's my top film, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. What are you doing?
Definitely worth a watch. However, I didn't think it wasn't without fault.
Oh, here we go.
Now, there are a few things that I noticed. And first of all, I want to say that the film was incredibly powerful. And I would absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, still recommend everyone to watch it. But I absolutely hated its relationship with death.
Well, that's your opinion. Moving on.
I think that it was ham-fisted. Can we do spoilers?
No.
What if we say spoilers?
Yeah. I guess we could say that. Just make it like really blatantly obvious.
I'm about to spoil the movie. If you don't want me to spoil the movie, pause the podcast and watch the movie, or fast forward a little bit and then we'll stop.
We'll put a
talking about
timestamp up. We'll put a timestamp
Yeah, if
up.
I remember, I'll put a timestamp up. When they were talking about how she wasn't going to
Give them
die-
time.
Oh,
Give
yeah.
them time to pause it.
When they
Oh,
were
no,
talking
yeah, go on.
about how she wasn't going to die, I was absolutely like not convinced by that whatsoever. I think that was a very, very, very cheap trick, and the reason why it was such a cheap trick was the disease that they gave her. Fucking leukemia.
Oh, flipping hell, Ben. It's a film.
No.
It's not real life.
It was.
Well.
It, I think, didn't leave any doubt in my mind. I think that, you know, if the girl didn't die, what's her name? I can't remember.
Rachel.
If
Oh my
Rachel,
god, I can't believe I nearly forgot that.
if Rachel didn't die, I would have felt cheated of a death. However, the nature of the disease that the screenwriters gave her meant that there was no doubt in my mind that she was going to have died. I think that, and for me, that big twist, that big, you know, reveal at the end where she does actually die is ruined, and it could have been something so much more clever.
You think but remember that spoilers, it was Greg's film that killed her. She didn't die just like naturally. Obviously she was going to die.
She had stage 4 cancer, Jack.
Yeah, but she didn't.
I read it.
She didn't die of stage 4 cancer then and there. It was Greg's film that put her into a coma, and she died. It was.
I read it as it was a coincidence. It was an inevitability, as opposed to.
I thought I can't remember much about it because I was in tears, but I thought he said something at the end about some sort of epileptic thing. Did he say that in the voiceover?
I can't remember. Possibly.
But I thought it was something. It was the film that killed her.
Right. Okay.
I think the cancer would have obviously killed her in the end,
Yeah.
but I think the point was that Greg's
But
film
if she had watched
killed
it
her.
healthy, would she have still died?
No.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
So you're bringing science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into a fictional story.
Yeah.
It's a film.
The thing that it did very well was subvert my expectations in other ways. You know, I've watched enough Star Trek to know that if Mr. Spock puts the MacGuffin in the locker, then that MacGuffin is probably going to be quite important in the next episode, or like later on in the same episode. What the film did very well was it placed an awful lot of red herrings with what was important within the narrative and what was not important within the narrative. And it constantly left you guessing which bit is going to come back and be an important point. And with the squirrels, you know, she mentioned the squirrels and how she used to count the squirrels with her dad.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the end scene, and he realizes that they're all of the squirrels.
Yeah.
Incredibly powerful. The cutting of the books as well.
Yeah. The first thing that Greg says when he walks into her room,
was about the wallpaper.
Books.
Yeah. And the wallpaper.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Just reading everything on value there.
Yeah. However, like I say, I think that big clever twist, it just wasn't pulled off as well as it could have been. And I think that because it was such a major point in the film, I was left a little bit deflated by it. I think, you know, if we're going on the thing of epilepsy and that she had an epileptic fit, then yeah, absolutely, that could have been something that was played off significantly more. She was on the road to recovery but still weak.
Right, okay, yeah.
You know, he gives this heartfelt speech that convinces her to go back on treatment, and it looks like she's getting better. And then he comes along and she has the epileptic fit, and because she's still weak, she dies. I think would have been a lot more powerful thing. Also, the history teacher saying leukemia is a normally curable disease.
Yeah, but Ben, remember, respect the research.
Respect the research. Exactly. Right, let's move on from that.
No, could I just say one of my favourite ever quotes from any film ever is actually in that, is from that film, and it is when Earl's chewing the pate, and he says, "What the hell even is this? This tastes like some funky ass dog's butthole." That is like my favourite line of any film ever. Like, it's so good.
Brilliant.
Anyway, a great film.
Great film, yeah, definitely
But
worth
we
a
must-
watch.
yeah.
And yeah, I'm very sorry if you still listen through and we massively spoiled that for you, but we did warn you.
Yeah.
So now, Jack, I think we should move on to our photo conversations. So I think it's your turn to go first this week. So
Yeah, I believe it
do
is.
crack on.
Right, here we go. So the word was redeem, and first thoughts about this word. It's going to be a difficult word for me, but I wanted to keep the self-portrait black and white, one by one. I wanted to keep consistency, and so I started how I always start these photo conversations, is I just Google the word,
Of course.
the definition, and the definition, I'm not going to lie, was a bit shit. It was paying a price for something in return, which to me sounds really positive, which again for me is a bit boring.
Yeah.
What I didn't realise is apparently it's two different words with two different definitions.
It is indeed. You're absolutely correct.
And so I looked at that and, oh my god, is redemption's definition so much darker? Redemption's definition is, from Google, says the action of saving or being saved from sin, error or evil. And so I immediately, when I read that, thought that's going to be the way I go, because it sounds very negative and something I can get behind. And the word sin for me, it was quite a religious word, and so I thought about that, and I thought about redemption in religion, and completely missed out the fact that Jesus' crucifixion, it was, he died for our sins, and so I looked at that, and I looked at, there's always the classic, I don't want to say the classic Jesus pose, but the sort of arms out on the cross pose,
Yeah.
I will send you the photo now, because I just realised I'm just waffling on. So that's the photo. Now, I looked at Christ the Redeemer, because obviously there's redeem in the title of that, and it turns out that the artist of that said something quite interesting about how Jesus' actions weren't the redemption, it was actually the arms out that was that was what signified redemption. So he believed that Jesus was actually the cross,
Right.
and that the arms out thing was the redemption, the sign for redemption.
Okay.
And so I went with that, and obviously I wanted to sort of visually have it similar to what I'd done before, and so that's the fairly plain way of explaining it, but I wanted to obviously incorporate sort of the mental health side of it. I wanted to incorporate the mental health side of it, as that's sort of been a running theme through my work, and so I thought about how I could sort of visually show that in the picture. And so I stood there on a stool, and afterwards I sort of looked at it a bit more, and I like the fact that it looks like I'm about to fall forward. And obviously in previous photos, such as the gutter one springs to mind, I've got a sort of obsession with falling. And so maybe that link to my mental health and sort of falling is I like that about it. The composition for me is, to be honest, when I took the picture I thought the composition was going to be awful because there was like a lot of distracting features around. But I kind of like the composition, the way the floor and the wall to the right and the tree to the left sort of frame me.
Yeah.
But I very much dislike this image.
Do you?
I do not like this image. For me, it's too grey. Like in my previous photos, my body especially is sort of, I don't want to say popped, but like it's the lighting on it been more interesting.
Well, it's because you're backlit.
There you go. And so if I were to do it again, I did try like I've forgotten which one it was. Dodging.
Burning.
Yeah, I did try to dodge the front of my body, but because I was backlit, it looked just completely fucked.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting image. It's a tad too obvious for me, personally. I actually think it would have been better if you were facing away from the camera. I don't particularly like your facial expression in it.
No, do you know what it is? Because I set up, obviously I can't have my phone in my hand whilst I'm tapping away, so I asked my brother to spam the button.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I think that's the same. That was one of the things that I sort of didn't like, was the facial expression.
Yeah. I don't mind the light, to be brutally honest. I think that it's, it has got an interesting kind of not colour, but an interesting shade to your back and to your shoulders and to your hand particularly as well. It's going to sound really harsh, but it just looks like a boy who's standing on a stool with his arms out.
Yeah, I was going to edit out the stool, but I thought, cliche much.
Yeah.
And so I left the stool because I thought, I wanted it to more represent the mental health. I think I just got too taken on by the literal.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I was to do it, I would actually just have you standing up against a wall with your arms out, because that's more that sense of being trapped.
Yeah,
but I think it's the fact that you're elevated up. Just, it gives me that kind of feeling of, I don't know. I think for what is about a lack of a better phrase, it feels like it was a little bit rushed.
Yeah.
Which, I can understand because I struggled with this word as well. But yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think it's, as far as what you have said about it, it is by far one of the more interesting ones, right? But I think it's just, I'm not getting that from the photo.
No, I think it's also, I want just another note about it is that it's not an advert for Top Man.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well.
I hate the fact that I'm not confident enough to just wear something smaller than a pair of shorts and Top Man boxers.
Yeah,
but
even if it was just with the shorts on, it would have been fine. But the fact that you can see the line of
the Top Man brand,
it definitely doesn't do it any favors. Because that is the one thing that you immediately look at.
Yeah, that's you're drawn to it, aren't you?
I mean, I think if I were you, honestly, I would work with the idea and I would just take it again.
Yeah, well, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do want to take it again, and maybe you're right with the facing away. I think that I like that idea.
Yeah. So, onto my photo. Now, I'm going to have to make an apology to Jack that you, the viewer, you will see the final result. However, Jack is not going to, and the reason why is because I haven't developed the film yet. So, yeah, sorry, mate, but you're going to be seeing a photo which is similar. Not exactly the same, but it's similar. There was one that I was trying to find, but I can't find it. So this is less similar than I was intending, but we're going to roll with it, and we're going to improvise.
Is it sort of the same explanation, or...?
The explanation remains the same, yeah.
Okay.
It's just I'm giving you a visual cue.
Ah, right, okay.
Okay, so let's start. Redeem was actually a very difficult word for me. In fact, I would actually go as far to say that this was the most difficult word that I've done so far. And that's even including gutter. And the reason that it was so difficult was, like last week, I didn't really want to be super introspective and risk doxing somebody that I know. So instead, like Jack, I actually thought about what the word redeem meant. My immediate thought was actually to take a photo of Red Dead Redemption. And I actually very seriously considered this. Now, the reason why is that, for those of you that don't know, you have like a goodness scale at the bottom, like a morality meter. And you can either be super evil or super good, or somewhere in the middle. And I'm one of these really boring people that always try and keep the goodness meter as far in the good as possible. And that for me brings the title true, that I'm redeeming myself, or at least my character, for the senseless killing of literally thousands. And I'm not joking, I actually googled this. On an average playthrough of Red Dead Redemption, you kill thousands of people. Okay? But it's okay because you found Mrs. Adler a mirror.
That means nothing to me. I've never played the game, but okay, carry on.
Somebody out there's like laughing their socks off it. So then I started thinking about a quote, which I think links to redemption quite well. And the quote is that the road to evil is paved with good intentions. And it's a quote that has rung true for me personally a lot in many, many different situations. I try to do what I think is the right thing, and I end up making the situation a lot worse. Now, if we did it right first time, then we wouldn't actually have to redeem ourselves. So this gets me onto the photo, which I'm going to send now. And Jack, can you just imagine that the road is straight, not curly, please?
Okay.
So, yeah, first of all, I'm back on paths. I know it's a cheap metaphor, but you know what? I'm just going to keep flogging this dead horse until it's given me everything it's got. So the photo that we have is a perfectly straight road. And
it is a perfectly straight road.
And definitely not a curly road. And there's no way in hell that we could stray from this road and deviate from our goal. We must stay on this path. However, we can't see what's going on over the horizon. And even though the path is completely straight, the journey leads us onto this false sense of security, and it can actually cause significant amounts of upset when you reach your destination and realize that even though you thought you were on the right path, what lies over the horizon isn't what you were expecting to be there. Ironically, after I took this photo, I wanted to leave, and I walked up the road. I walked all the way up it, and then I realised that I was going in the wrong direction and had to walk all the way back down. And as I was doing that, I was like, oh, this actually adds to the metaphor very well. And so it's kind of a loose interpretation of redemption, but that's my thought process. That's how I got here. And the photo, I think, worked quite well, providing that it gets developed properly, because, again, I haven't seen it yet. But, yeah, that's what I've got for you. Now, Jack, it's going to be very difficult for you to comment on my photo.
Insert Jack voiceover here.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa, crazy. Hello everybody, it's Jack from the future here. I'm here to review Ben's photo conversation image, which this one was Redeem. I have both the unedited version and the edited version on my screen right now, and straight off the bat, I prefer the unedited version. Visually, I think it's a lot less distracting. You know, in the edited version, you've got the blown out highlights. It's a bit too orange for my liking, and I think I prefer the softer shadows and like softer colours in the unedited version. Also, I would have, if I were to do this, I would have cropped out the bush on the bottom right. I think that is quite distracting. I can tell you've sort of, obviously with the shadows and stuff like that, you've sort of darkened it a little bit, but it is a bit distracting. And the two pillars as well, I think if you could have cropped it so they each had like the same space either side, I think that would have visually improved it, and also maybe contextually. I think obviously with the straight road thing, you had the context of you redeem yourself, you get back on that straight road. I think maybe, I don't know, most of the time when you're talking I drift in and out, but now's not the time for that. But yeah, visually, those three things, maybe the highlights are a bit distracting. Bush in the bottom right and cropped it to center. I like the context of the image. The straight road again is a context of the word that I would have never thought about. So again, that's very good, and I like the image. So maybe like mine, it maybe needed like re-editing or redoing, but I think it works, and yeah, good image. Now back to the pad. Whoa! Hello, it's Future Jack here. Future Jack forgot to pick a new word for the photo conversation, so I'm here to do that. Now the introductions are done, we might as well just do it straight away. No, let me just close that down. Alright, and a 3 and a 2 and a 1. The word is retreat. Good word. If you want to get involved in this photo conversation, just upload to Instagram and use the hashtag Mediocre conversation to get involved. You will probably be featured on the show, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that feedback, Jack. That was very useful. And I would love to discuss it further, but I fear that we are running out of time, and so we have to move on. So now on to the main part of the show. And today we're going to be talking a lot about how social media and internet photographers have influenced the current goings-on in the world. And if you are watching this 20 years in the future, the current goings-on in the world is that the world is just recovering from a global pandemic, the coronavirus, and America is currently experiencing mass protests over the unlawful killing of a black man called George Floyd. So I have some thoughts on this, but I was wondering, Jack, if you would like to start, as this was kind of your idea and your brainchild, and I want to see what direction you go in with this.
Okay. Well, I was probably just going to say the same thing as you.
No, go ahead, because
No, I want to hear what you have to say first, because I think we've said the same thing, but I've written less than you.
okay. I very highly doubt that you've gone down the same route as me. But let's do this.
Oh God.
So, the killing of George Floyd. First of all, absolutely terrible tragedy. To give you a very, very, very loose summary, his death was recorded, so it stemmed from a photograph. The photograph was then published online and it went viral, and this caused widespread protests across mainland US, as well as, in fact, the entire world. And millions of people rallied up and protested the situation, and still are to this day, absolutely. Now, during these riots, there have been numerous accounts on both sides of the picket fence of people doing bad things. Okay? Now I'm talking not just police brutality, and there has been a systemic problem with that, but there has been cases of rioting as well. And neither of these are good things. Now the problem is that if I have taken a photo of somebody doing something bad, I publish that on social media. As soon as I do that, I have lost control of that image. And as soon as that happens, one key thing is lost, and that is the context of the image. Okay? And there's a great example of this that I came across on Reddit the other day. And it was a photograph of a young man who was being arrested, and he had his face completely smashed up. Okay? And he posted it on his Twitter, and it got hijacked. And so many people jumped on this. Oh, this was another case of police brutality. Oh, look at this. We haven't solved a single thing. Really getting on their high horse. And this kid had to explain the story afterwards. And he'd explained it in the original post, and then had to clarify it. That what had happened was he was being arrested for a crime that he committed, and he openly admitted to committing this crime. And he then decided to run. And in the what happened was he ran away, and he fell on concrete, and he smashed his face up. Police came after him, and they arrested him. And he said that when he was in police custody, they were really, really nice to him. Even though he tried to run, they didn't abuse him or assault him in any way. They called him an ambulance, they checked him out, made sure that he was okay. And he ended the tweet saying, I've got huge respect for all police officers, whether they be black or white, as long as they treat me with respect as well. And that is a classic case of what happens so often in this situation, is that it so quickly spirals out of control and becomes something that it wasn't ever intended to be.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with photos, isn't it? That I think moving image at a time like now is possibly a bit more.
It can still be taken so quickly out of context.
Yeah, but I a photo, it even more so, I think, because you're not seeing the beginning or the afters. You're literally seeing one shot, and that shot could be the one with the smashed up face, or it could have been him running away from the police after whatever he did. But no, I think, yeah, as you say, like, photos can have a downside in this sort of situation.
And the other thing that you wanted to talk about was, well, first of all, is there anything you want to add to what I've said there?
I think I agree with the photos being dangerous, in that sense, where it doesn't tell the full story. Personally, this is obviously a photography show podcast, but I think there's a difference again with you mentioned earlier that the rioting is bad. I don't think the rioting is bad. I think possibly the looting is bad. And I think there might be a difference.
I think it's a semantic difference. Rioting is an unlawful protest.
Okay, so like a violent protest.
Violent, it can be peaceful, but when you organize it, you have to organize a protest. You have to get permission from the correct authorities in order to do it. If I went and massed 100 people at my local park right now, it would get shut down, and that would effectively be defined as a riot.
Do you think the organisers could go up to the authorities at a time like this and be like, "Yeah, we're going to hold a protest"?
Yeah,
you reckon that's all right?
Absolutely.
And the police? Do you reckon?
I absolutely think
that
would do, because you're forgetting one very important thing, and the document the Americans pride more than any other document in the entire world, and that's their Bill of Amendments and their Bill of Rights. And the First Amendment on that Bill of Rights is you have the right to exercise your freedom of speech. And if any authoritarian figure ever denied somebody the right to protest, that would be that person out of a job and actually potentially even facing legal action instantly. Yeah. And that's something that I do want to clarify. To my knowledge, a lot of the protests that have been organised have been legal and have gone through the correct channels. However, there have been some that have not, and that is the rioting that I mentioned before. Right. You know, looting is often a factor of rioting, but
and most of the time the looters are not really involved in the actual riot. They're just looting for their own.
Yeah, and I want to cycle back to that later on because I have more points on that. But yeah, so the next thing that we wanted to talk about is everyone being a photographer a good thing? And first of all, again, Jack, I'm going to give you the opportunity to start this conversation off. What do you think?
Well, I think that obviously for a photographer to watching, photography become easier and easier to access is difficult, but I guess in a time like this when people need information, in terms of just information about the riots and what's actually going on, and photos from anyone is always a massive plus in this case. Obviously, like, people with just mobile phones over the last few weeks have taken far more important photos than I will ever take. Photos that will probably gain more views, hits and interest, and also change more things than my photos ever would. But I think that's a good thing. I think that especially if I'm not at the epicenter of it, and so any photo that's sort of shared is good for people like me, as I'm not involved.
Any photo?
It depends. I haven't seen. This is going into the sort of social media side of it now. I haven't really seen. I've only seen pictures from one side. I haven't seen pictures from the other side. I haven't seen the police were there with their photos because their body cams are all turned off. But the pictures I have seen are horrifying, and the footage that I've seen is horrifying, and I think it is important that people document this because, as you say, 20 years from now, if anybody's watching this, which I doubt it, but if anybody's watching this, it's a moment in history. This is probably the biggest thing for the Black Lives movement. I don't really know my history that well, which is probably not a bad thing, but yeah, you know, you're documenting history, and any photo is gonna help.
Yes, and I have a note here when I was thinking about this. I have two notes actually that I want to make, and the first one is again coming back to this rule of context. And you said every photo that I see is a positive thing, and every photo that I see I want to look at. However, again, you need to be so careful about what people are posting and if it can be spun. And by spun, I mean taken out of context, or more deliberately, the context being flipped on its head. And I've got two examples of this. There was the guy who got pushed down in New York by the policeman and ended up having a cranial bleed.
Oh, that was the old guy, wasn't it?
You can't take that out of context. You know,
no,
the clip that was saw there.
But I will say that was a video.
Yeah, I'm using photography and video interchangeably here.
Yeah, okay, but that's what I mean. Like videos, they give you.
Yeah, I appreciate
after,
that, but my next point will prove that it's not a perfect system.
Right.
Okay. What about a video of a protester being arrested?
Okay. Yeah. Well, it depends.
Yeah, exactly.
Because obviously, whatever side films it is obviously going to be.
It's not even whatever side films it. It's whatever side gets hold of that footage. Okay. Yeah. Let me construct two very different narratives here. This was Dale. Dale was peacefully protesting at an organized demonstration. A cop thought that he looked the wrong way at him. A cop thought that he was suspicious. A cop thought that he was carrying, and the cop maced him and arrested him. Okay? That's narrative number one. This is narrative number two, and the video can be exactly the same. Narrative number two. This is Dale. Dale is an extremist who's managed to infiltrate this peaceful protest. And Dale wants to cause civil unrest because Dale has bad intentions. And the way that he wants to do that is he's going to stab a police officer. And so Dale pulls out a knife. Police officer sees it fall. Dale gets maced. He gets bundled to the ground and he gets arrested. Now, the thing is that we don't know Dale from Dale in this situation. And often in footage like that, the person is anonymized, not through intention of the edit, but anonymized as in you cannot see who they are. Okay? And they could be silenced as well. You may never know their full story. You know, a lot of cases, unfortunately, people lose their lives in this situation. And that can be spun in so many different ways. And that is the real risk that you have with posting stuff like that online. And to further this point, and I should say as well, is that I think that social media has definitely influenced Black Lives Matter movement in a positive way. Okay? But I also know that right-wing extremism is absolutely on the rise. And I was watching a documentary last night, and it was saying that it was the quickest rising form of terrorism within all Western countries. And these domestic terrorists, they're watching the riots with great interest. And now, obviously, they don't like what they see. You know, as far as they're concerned, the people that are protesting are, you know, lesser beings. They're not the supreme white. I've just realised that as I say that, that could also be taken completely out of context. But we'll move on from that. However, what they also see is we could turn this into a race war. We could help to start the ball rolling on what their end goal is, which is effectively a collapse of society. And it's those white supremacists and those extremists that have been trying to turn these peaceful protests into riots. But they've also been hijacking footage from both sides to use in order to groom and radicalize other young people into joining terrorist cells. Our anonymous Dale, who's videoed being arrested, his narrative is taken completely in different ways. And I know that those are isolated cases, but they do happen. And there's no way whatsoever that you can protect from that. I could take a clip off YouTube, I can take it into Premiere, I can erase its metadata, and I can re-upload it as something completely different. And I can do that in 20 minutes. You know, it's a really, really, really incredibly powerful thing, and an incredibly worrying thing that I find more and more. And there's one more point that I want to make, and this is about shock photography and shock images. Now, I've done quite a lot of research into this when I was doing my dissertation, and I do have it here. I don't think I'm going to read it, but I want to keep it more on the topic of the BLM movement. And it's been proven time and time and again that shock images change people's views. Absolutely no denying that whatsoever. You know, why do you think that cigarette packets have got photos of shriveled up lungs on them? Why do you think that PETA often depicts animals being tortured in their promotional videos? Okay, and I was watching a different documentary, which is called 13th, which is on Netflix, which, if you're interested in the BLM movement and the absolute systemic race inequality that has been going on in America since its creation, then definitely give 13th a watch. And you know, I watched George Floyd being choked to death. You know, I watched Laquan McDonald, who was an unarmed black man who was running from the police because he was scared, get shot in the back of the head. I watched Philando Castile, who was pulled over for a busted taillight, who was shot in the stomach by a police officer while he was still sat in his car. And you can't watch those videos and then say that there isn't systemic race equality within the United States. But here's the problem, that more and more people are being desensitized to this every single day, right? It's not just video games, but it's media in general. You know, the first time that I came into contact with George Floyd's death, it was on the 6 o'clock news on BBC. And the only warning that report gave was, this report contains footage that some viewers might find distressing. And what that causes is that the amount that it takes to shock someone goes up, and then their level of desensitization goes up. And so that shock bar has to be raised even more. And that more shocking footage becomes mainstream. And the more shocking that footage is, the more easily it can be hijacked and spun out of context. And it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying, what people can do with media and what the media can do in order to spin things in different ways. And it works. It absolutely works. You know, there is a reason that incarceration among black people is so much higher than it was throughout white people. And that's because black people have been portrayed as criminals for the last 50 years in the United States. And shit like that sticks. And it takes so much undoing in order to bring black people to the level where they should be, which is, of course, equal to everybody else in the entire world.
Well, I was going to say that the footage and photographs were from America. Like, anything about the protests and the sort of movement is very important to, I don't know about you, but it is to me, because obviously Devon is not really known for its diversity. I think I read somewhere that like it's 90% of Devon, or Devon is 90% white, and like that's when like Gypsy and Traveller white, they're in the other 10%, and that's why these photos are so important, because I've never witnessed firsthand racism or police brutality before, or anything like that, and so I'm fairly like clean slate about the whole subject. Like there was one black guy in my year at secondary school, and I never understood. You know, he's a cool dude, and there was actually a black guy in the year above, and it was his brother. And so, like, you know, I obviously haven't, down in Devon, we haven't been exposed to this sort of thing, and you know, I whenever I see any footage, I think, why, how can they see them as this? But as you explained, like the media over the last 50 years has sort of changed the narrative of, you know, what the hell's going on. But I think that any imagery, footage, or any information is so valuable. And again, you know, just to say that, you know, social media has been a massive part of that movement and a very important part of it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I want to finish off with final little words before we call it a day. It's often said that photography is one of the most powerful tools that the world has ever created. And the reason for that is that it can hold people accountable. You know, you look at the horrible weapons of war that we have, and you look at everything that goes on, but at the end of the day, the keys to those horrible weapons of war are held by the people in power. And the people in power, they listen to the people. The way that you change the people's mind is through the media, is through social media, is through images, is through video. And people often say that photography is truthful and that it's cold, hard evidence. And to that I say that is complete bullshit.